sir.
Good morning, sir.
We have a lot to discuss.
63 pages, approximately. Give or
All
take,
right,
depending on your
so
formatting.
anybody who isn't chronically online may not have seen this, but there have been two big developments in the world of sports over the last couple days. First, Major League Baseball published a 63-page study titled Major League Baseball Report on Pitcher Injuries. So this is how do I put this? It is a study, a report, an investigation by Major League Baseball into the phenomenon of the increase in pitcher injuries, what's causing it, what are they going to do about it, what can they do about it, etc. Second piece of news is that via the world of college football, the NCAA announced that they are going to change the rule around junior college eligibility and NCAA eligibility. So the quarterback from Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, sued the NCAA saying that he should get another year of eligibility because his years in junior college aren't the same in terms of the earning potential of his NIL money. So he was saying he should be granted four years of eligibility.
I didn't know that was why it happened, but that is,
Yeah.
in the current climate, that is very savvy of that guy to do.
Yeah. So I think let's come back to the NCAA thing.
Mhm.
We maybe won't even get to that on this episode, but we got to discuss this pitcher injury report.
Yes.
There's been a lot of discourse on like baseball Twitter around this.
Mhm.
It is kind of the hot button topic. It's a lot of people's kind of like front of mind thing. So we're going to talk about this. So here's where I would start. I'm going to give you kind of like I have tried to read through this. I didn't actually get to reading the official document until this morning. I haven't read the entire thing yet.
Me either.
I've read the majority of it.
Yeah.
Knee-jerk reaction. Couple knee-jerk reactions. First, there's a lot of people online that are suggesting that the solution to this is that pitchers should just simply be worse at their jobs.
Don't hit the ball so far, okay? Don't throw it so hard.
It's so ridiculous that people are like, they should just not try to throw hard. Like, okay. Or we could discuss actual solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, there's a lot of this document that is interviewing, quote, subject matter experts.
Yes.
And there is a lot of statements from industry experts that are just subjective opinions backed up by very little data. There is plenty of data in this study because there's obviously a lot of data that's available around this.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's these quotes mixed in that are just opinions with no like nothing to back it up, and they're kind of putting it in there like, look, this industry expert says this, as if that's data. That's not data. That's a person's opinion, and it's not backed up by anything.
That was my first. I completely agreed. Like upon reading the official document, so I read a lot of like the news, like AP put one out. There were a couple on like major like sports outlets. I read this. There might be, of the 63 pages, I have read 15 pages of quotes from, but not quotes based upon analysis of the data, quotes based upon opinions of MLB physical therapist, orthopedic surgeon who works with White Sox.
Yeah.
Like
there's the orthopedics. I know I carry some bias here, but there is not a single blurb quote from an orthopedic surgeon in this document that I've seen that provides any value.
Agreed.
Like,
I just read one. Do you want
right
me to
here.
read you the one that's completely erroneous? I just read it. Here it is. Orthopedic surgeon number 8. This one's a little longer, but stay with me here. Okay. This is great. The ending of this, I wanted to make sure it was the one I read. When you look at the shoulder, you see more lat teres major subscap capsule injuries. I've seen more in the last 5 years than I saw in the prior 25. I think that's true. I don't have numbers, but in my business, we may be misdiagnosed, but MRIs have been around a long time. We just didn't see those injuries, but they have a common theme. They are all under maximum duress at the change from external to internal rotations. The capsule's under maximum violent stretch, and those muscles are the exact ones that would be trying to protect the capsule at that instance. I'm not kidding you. For 20 years, I don't think I saw more than 1 or 2. Now, in the last 5 years, those muscles are all synchronized for a specific part of the pitching motion. Now, in the last 5 years, those are all synchronized because they weren't before. Now I'm seeing a couple a year on the 26-man roster alone. It's different.
So this guy's suggesting that in the last 5 years, the manner in which people throw has drastically changed. And
correct.
The way muscles work has also changed. And it just goes to show, like, the valuable quotes come from major league pitching coaches, major league athletic trainers, and front office people, because they're the people who understand the actual demands of the sport itself.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this before. Orthopedic surgeons are mechanics. They know the parts. They have absolutely no idea what it's like to drive the car. They've never even been inside the car in the passenger seat. These guys drive me nuts.
I was going to say, it's rare that you see an orthopedic surgeon that has played or done something athletically at a high level, because the demand to be an orthopedic surgeon is so neurologically demanding. But continue.
Quote, all the weighted ball training is a big issue. We had a significantly higher injury rate in people that use weighted balls. Is it the ball itself that creates injury? I'm not sure. We always saw guys that would take an abrupt bump in their velocity, and those guys always tore their UCL. These guys are throwing too fast for what their body can handle. They're getting paid to get guys out, and their injury risk, performance trumps everything else. I don't know how you stop that, though. Orthopedic surgeon number 6. Always. A lot of always in there. So if you take an abrupt bump in your velocity, then you're always going to tear your UCL. All the weighted ball training is a big issue.
You can only take a bump in your velocity if you do weighted ball training. That's the only way. Always.
How about this one? Hold on. Orthopedic surgeon number 5. Another one is the weighted ball ordeal. It's not a new thing. When I was plated, we threw the weighted balls we had. A baseball is 5 ounces. We had a 4 and 5 ounce ball. Now they have ridiculous 1 pound balls. I'm just not sure the arm can adapt to that. The weighted ball and trying to create whip with a heavy or light ball, you're overdoing it. I think that has an effect. So you're telling on yourself because you have absolutely no idea how these balls are actually used in a training program. And you haven't bothered to learn. It would take a 5-minute Google to learn this, to figure out what the actual implementation of those ridiculous 1 pound balls are. But you haven't bothered. Also, 1 pound is less than a football. Are you an idiot? A football weighs 17 ounces.
Dude.
A pound is 16 ounces.
I have this.
1 pound ball is not ridiculous.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
A football weighs more than that.
It's ridiculous if you don't think about it.
Oh my God. Okay. So getting away from the surgeons, because we could do a whole episode just yelling about how surgeons don't know ball. Now here's a little bit of a more level-headed take. There's a really telling chart here where you look at this chart and it shows the major and minor league injuries. This is bad podcasting because I'm describing something visually, but it shows the UCL surgeries from 2010 to 2024. And
what page are you on here, guy?
I'm on page 5.
Oh, you're way
so on page 5, we've got in 2018 or 2019, excuse me, you got 188 UCL surgeries in the minor leagues.
Screen share. Put it on your screen.
Oh yeah, I forgot we can do that.
Come on,
look
use
at us
the
go.
technology, man.
Hey, it's in the name of the podcast. It's the name of the podcast. Amateur. We're amateur podcasters. Cut me a break here. All right. So here in 2019, 188 and 20. Major league is in the red, minor league's in the blue. 2020, COVID shortened season, right? This is still COVID year. So we don't have a lot of meaningful data here. And that's fine. Now, in 2021, we see this big jump, especially in the minor leagues, right? Small jump in the major leagues, big jump in the minor leagues. And then 2022, we actually see an overall decrease. 2023, a little bit of an increase again. 2024, actually a slight decrease, kind of flat. So this right here, the 2021, I think, is something that's very telling. And my interpretation of that bump right there is that we had a huge decrease in chronic workloads, and then people tried to return to competitive play, and they were underprepared, and they got hurt. That's what that looks like to me.
I have a thought on that as well. The thought I had, that didn't immediately occur to me. That's part of the COVID stuff, but this is right around the time when we decreased the amount of minor league teams, correct? The affiliates.
Yeah, that was. It's around. It's a similar time. What year did they actually do that? 2022, something like that. 2021. I think it was a little bit more recent than that, but I'm not
entering the 2021 season. So yeah, same time. So, okay, so I think
that actually correlates perfectly. Yeah.
Yep. Because there, you want to talk about like feast or famine. At that point, guys were coming off not having enough workload, like you said, Zach, but then competition for jobs doubled. So you had to go out. You couldn't just show up and throw 90 anymore and get a spot and get your insurance and, get your per diem and get your stipend and, check the boxes. You had to go out on that off season after a short year and make sure you were coming back to camp with something that was plus plus. And that was when realistically in that 2018 to 2020 is where we saw a huge, I would argue, is where we saw the largest increase in velocity. That was right when I was getting out of graduate school. That's when we were seeing like Aroldis Chapman and I don't know, who's the guy? K-Rod were the only two dudes throwing 100. Mm-hmm. Every team all of a sudden had a starter who was sitting 98. This is the advent of the Garrett Cole era. This is where it became normalized to see starters sitting upper 90s every start. This is where Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer both made their huge velocity jumps. It was right around this time period. So you see that the demand for the game changed, not only due to COVID, but also due to decrease in affiliates, also due to the fact that guys were like, oh, we need to get better. One other thought I have while I'm on that, I feel that I don't have a distinct data for this, but how old is Shane Bieber? He's 30, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a little farther along in his career.
Let me check. This is the point I'm getting to. I'm sure you guys can all. Let me see his age. 1 second. He's 30. Yep. Major injury. Nestor Cortez, 33. Major injury. Max Scherzer, 38. Major injury. Justin Verlander, 38. Major injury. Clayton Kershaw, 36. Major injury. A lot of these injuries are coming because these guys are trying to stay with the times and they're aging. We're also getting guys into the game later at the very high levels of professional baseball. The MLB average for a rookie now is 2 or 3 years older than he used to be. Mm-hmm. So that's 2 or 3 more years of throwing 100 plus innings, maybe depending on what they're doing, but also 2 or 3 more years of extreme development because you need to compete. You need to keep up. Mm-hmm. And realistically, this report is great. It's great to have this information. It is. It's important to see this, but at the same time, this is looking at someone who's at the highest level. We have a powerlifter we work with. He's 340 pounds. Okay. He deadlifts over 900 pounds, squats over 700, and benches in the mid fives. Guess what? He's not going to be 340 pounds his entire life because he's known he's going to die when he's 40. But he knows the only way for him to make money and be the best at the sport is to be that for this time in his life. Mm-hmm. That's how this is viewed. Like, these injuries come because guys are trying to make money for their families. Mm-hmm. Like, they are trying to provide stability with the talent that they have. And the only way they can do it is they have to get to the top. They have to get to the top end. You can't say like, oh, yep. Like you said, Zach, can you just be okay at your job? And you should just be okay at it. You know, screw your family. Like, you know, screw like whoever's helped you get this far. They don't matter. Just be fine at it. Like, yeah, it'd be the same thing. Like, if these orthopedic surgeons or the people who are doing like these opinion-based things that we're getting this, if we were like, hey, you know what? What if you were just to make a third of what you make right now? And then maybe also lose your job at any moment. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? That orthopedic surgeon would go, I will work as many hours as it takes to maintain what I have, if not get better. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And they, to become an orthopedic surgeon, they had to grind. They had to go through really stressful time, risk, like stress-related illnesses, whatever. Right. Yeah. I want to dig into some more specifics in a second, but there is this sort of like underlying implication throughout this study. And there's a lot of this that gets sort of implied within these quotes from the industry people, where they're saying things sort of implying that pitchers are just chasing velocity or just chasing spin rate, and they're not really trying to be good at pitching. They're just doing this. And that's just not like, that's not like, obviously they are doing this so that they can be good at pitching, so that they can be competitive. There's a whole section on spin rate in this study.
Yeah.
And there's some more like surgeons not knowing ball. Like, there was one surgeon saying like, obviously in order to spin it like that, you have to grip the crap out of the ball. And you know, it's unnatural for the musculature. And I'm like, told on yourself, you've never thrown a ball. Like, if you're going to spin a pitch higher, you don't grip it tighter. That is the opposite of how you spin a pitch higher. Mm-hmm. So you've immediately, anything else that you have to say, you've completely taken away any expertise that you purport to have. So,
I just read that quote.
But people are quote chasing these numbers. You know, one guy was in a quote was bitching about how pitchers are just looking at the iPad all the time. Yeah, well, when radar guns came out, they were just looking at the radar gun a lot too. They're trying to see if they're good. They're trying to be good at the game. It's absurd. And there's this underlying theme where people are like, you know, oh man, like we need to convince these guys that chasing velocity isn't what it's all about. That's kind of what they're implying. And I just think it's so out of touch because, like you just said, it's worth it to these people. We as athletes, we accept the risks. We know that there's a risk of blowing our shit out. Mm-hmm. It is worth it. And these people, I think, are trying to project their own cowardice onto people that they do not understand. Mm-hmm. They cannot get inside the head of a real high performer. And they're trying to project their fear onto him. They don't understand why he isn't experiencing fear the same way that they are. Can you imagine if anybody, like, take anybody who's done anything unequivocal in the world. Mm. Can you imagine if they listen to the people that are like, but that's dangerous? You know, what if Travis Pastrana had listened to all the people like, dude, you're going to jump a car over the river? You could die. He's like, yeah, I know. That's the point.
You know? Could you imagine
no, Ferdinand Magellan, don't try to circumnavigate the globe. You could get eaten by savages or die of diphtheria. He's like, yeah.
You're going to jump out of a plane to kill other people? You could die doing it. Yeah, but I could kill a lot more of them than I die doing it. Like, it's, yeah. I mean,
I just don't. There's a certain subset of the population that filters their entire worldview through fear. And they don't understand these people. They don't understand the mindset of a major league pitcher. I would hearken back to that. There's that famous sports psychology study with Olympians where they asked Olympians, like, hey, magic pill. you take this magic pill, guarantees you a gold medal, but it shortens your lifespan by 10 years. Would you take it? And like 70% of them said yes.
Yeah. 100%.
And then people were like shocked. Like, oh my God, I can't believe these people they're willing to die. Like, yeah, dude, are you kidding? That surprises you?
Yeah. It's their life's work. It's their life's work. It is literally like, it's their Picasso. Like same thing with these guys who are, that is, so like my dream was to be a professional baseball player, and I got very close and I got hurt. But I would have, if you would have told me that, I mean, I would have given anything, literally anything. I mean, I gave my labrum, I gave every piece of my body could handle. I was like, if I have to put robotic bits back in for me to get a chance, like not even to be in the MLB, just to get drafted by anybody, I would have given absolutely anything. And they're like I totally agree. Like this, it's that you have to be so dedicated to something that it is what you are. But we've talked about this before. If you really want to be fantastic at anything in life, if you want to be, we just sent when Mikalaka sent the drummer from Tool changing beats, like 4 different beats during the same, like to be godlike, to have a gift that takes decades to become, like you have to hit the genetic lottery, you have to have work ethic, all the breaks have to go your way for you to finally get to where you want to be. If you said to anybody who aspires for something like that and be like, hey, when you turn 70, you're not going to be able to see anymore, and you'll lose your left foot, but you'll get this, I'd go blind in a second. I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't even think twice. I'd be like, yeah, take it from me. Take all my teeth, whatever you want. I don't want to remember my name. If you roll me into traffic at that point, that's fine. Because I've achieved what I've put, like what my end goal is that I've achieved that. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So there's one sentence from a major league athletic trainer in here too that I really appreciated. He's one of the quotes that I liked. He said, what good is a healthy major league pitcher if he can't get guys out?
Yeah.
And that's perfect.
Someone now, get that guy on the mic more often. We need more of that.
Now here's I'm going to screen share one more time here because this is an interesting piece of this study as well. This chart right here I thought was interesting. So pitcher injury list placements through opening day compared to in-season placements 2017 to 2024. So we look at one chart, spring training through opening day, and day 2 of the season through the end of the season. And then this is average placements by month. And so if we look at, this has red as elbow injuries and then other throwing arm injuries. So if we look at this, spring training injuries are on the rise drastically. During the season, injuries are actually falling. And you look at you got the 2021 bump, post-COVID year right here.
Guys trying to jockey for position. They're trying to keep guys out of arbitration. They're trying to keep guys like time served, all that stuff. Which is, for you guys who don't know, go on Google and look at how ridiculous the moves that MLB teams will put in place to like not pay guys for time served. It's ridiculous. They're robbing them. It's insane. But continue.
Now this means something. This comparison. Now the exact conclusion to be drawn from this, I don't know, because I don't know all of the details of what goes on at spring trainings and things like that. But here's my gut feeling. You look at the elbow injuries, they're all in February, March, and then a big drop off, and then a little bump in August towards the end of the year. But really, I mean, we're looking at a decrease in injuries throughout the season. Now that flies in the face of the whole like overuse, quote unquote, overuse conclusion. Now we'll get back to overuse because I do think that there's something to be discussed there. But this to me is an indictment on what people are doing in the off seasons. This is how major league pitchers are spending their off seasons. There's some disconnect between what they're doing when they're away from spring training and what they're asked to do when they get there. And there's another chart spring training workload. So because your first reaction is like, oh, the spring training is way too hard on these guys. The spring training workloads have actually fallen too, though. So like we're trending downward now. I don't know what the deal is with this, like this little downtick and up, but
This is still that's still. I read something about that. That's the latency of the affiliations. So they were bringing more guys to spring training because there's
yes,
less
okay,
affiliations. So
makes perfect sense.
they're still trying to sort out like so that's where everybody it was the friendship game. Everybody's getting 2 innings because they don't know what they're going to do with them yet.
Yeah. So it's probably not that they're pushing these guys too hard in spring training necessarily. I mean, maybe they are relative to what they're prepped for, but it's probably more of a, I think it's probably more of an indictment on how the off seasons are being spent. And so they are either grossly underprepared in the off season, or they're working a little too hard in the off seasons. Hard to say for sure.
I would argue that a majority of guys who are trying to make it are working so hard in the off season because they know they need to add. Like they're like all the guys we work with. Like you come into an off season and you're like, okay, I need to add this, this, and this. I need to get better at this. And you have, especially if they're like playing with the big league club, this, they get what? Not even 2 full months, one like 8 weeks max from when they get done. Let's say they get done right at the end of the year. So they get done. Last regular season game is what, September something? Maybe the 1st of October.
Yeah. Late September.
Yeah. They get October, November, December, and a part of January.
Well, they might get October. I mean, if they're in playoffs, if we're talking about a major leaguer.
November. So they would be November. So take 2 months away from that. They get 2 months, and then they're back at spring training. And once they're back at spring training, they're not just working on pitch shape or pitch design or velocity. They're now facing hitters as well, which is a completely different stimulus. So and I think the other part that we have to be cognizant of is that the notion that arm rest isn't like extremely important, like that you need to take months off or like multiple weeks off. Whereas we know like a lot of the guys who made velocity jumps later in their careers or were able to throw for longer in their careers, not just the outliers, not just the Randy Johnsons or the Nolan Ryans. They're guys that threw all year round, no matter what. They'll play catch off the wall during the All-Star break. It was the only way for them to keep their body moving because neurologically it's so hard to come back up to that. I think the issue is that sometimes we get like guys will take that time off, but they only have so much time to ramp back up, and they're there and they're throwing their first bullpen at probably 85%, 90% effort. I was just talking with a guy the other day who's a borderline drafty guy I'm working with, and he's like, I got to throw my bullpens at 85-ish% at least because otherwise I can't. My pitch, it's useless. I can't see any of my shapes. I can't see if anything's doing what he's like, if I'm on the mound 2 to 3 times a week, just trying to work on stuff, he's like, I'm up 85+% 3 times a week. But I feel like that's pretty normal for guys at high levels. I don't think that that's out of the realm of normal for most guys.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So moving ahead here.
Sorry, I got off the rails there.
Here's a part of this study that I actually think, so like I kind of bitched and moaned about some of this, but I think that there's a part of this study that's really correct and important. There's one piece of this whole equation that I think people are kind of right to complain about, and it's the whole early to ripe, early to rot thing. And what it takes to get recruited now and what the youth baseball environment looks like today. So there's a lot of commenting on how younger kids are playing baseball in a completely different format now. They play on Saturday, they throw 60 pitches as hard as they can, and then they play on Sunday, maybe they play a position, and then they don't play it, they do nothing until next Saturday when they let it rip again. They're not touching a baseball, they're not throwing they're not playing on like a regular basis. They're playing in these like concentrated bursts. And there's no doubt in my mind that is probably detrimental. Now I'm doing the thing that I just complained about. I don't have any data to back this up. So, but I see kids who are underprepared and overreaching what they're trying to achieve from a performance standpoint, and they're not doing the preparation work. They're not doing the chronic, like their chronic workload is too low. We're seeing their acute to chronic workload ratio is seeing too many spikes and valleys. And the training calendar is weird. The showcase calendar is weird. You get a guy who's trying to go and show his stuff at some perfect game tournament, and then 2 days later he's going to go do some showcase, and there's not a lot of like planning when it comes to their arm things, their workload, their outputs. And I've commented on this before. I see a pattern in youth sports right now where kids do not know how to cruise. They only throw a ball if they feel like they have to. And when they throw everything as hard as they can all the time. And I'm not just talking about pitching. I'm talking about regular throwing, position player throwing as well. In the last 6-7 years, I've noticed this trending in this direction with younger kids. They treat throwing like it's I'm not going to throw unless I have to because I want to protect my arm. And again, I think it's from this fear-based logic that people have is, throwing equals danger, but you're forgetting that like not all throwing is created equal. And you're forgetting that in order to be resilient to throwing, you need to throw so you can develop resilience. Kyle Bodie put out the workload, the stress adaptation curve chart. He's like, this right here is a huge key in this whole equation, and nobody seems to discuss this. Where like, you stress, your performance is going to dip, and then you recover and you super compensate. Mm-hmm. And I've explained that chart. I've drawn that picture for people, parents, coaches, players. I don't know how many 50, hundreds of times over the years, and nobody has ever heard of that concept. And it's always really eye-opening for them. And I think it's problematic that nobody's ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Like that should be maybe like something that is common knowledge, but it isn't.
Well, it seems simple to us.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this with Will Rattel too. And we talk about this with our guys a lot. I talk about this at my clinic a lot. They're like, I just didn't do what I did last week. And it's like, well, you can't do it every week. You can't mm-hmm. do it every day. You need to do it, but you can't do it at 1,000% every day. You'll blow up. Like you can't run. I tweeted this in response to this. I was on the tweeter. I popped out a tweeter. And I tweeted, I was like, drag cars blow up. Mm-hmm. Priuses don't. You can feather the throttle and get through life just same amount of stimulus all the time. But realistically, if you want to make drastic change, like you said, Zach, you have to have that the stress adaptation. You have to stress, adapt, recover, stress, adapt, recover, stress, adapt, recover, repeat until you find your absolute neurological or physical limit. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way you're going to know if there was enough gas in the tank or not. So, but that is so true. I think one of my biggest gripe with, and I know we're doing a lot of bitching right now, but it is correct. This study for youth, this is big. This needs to be noted. It needs to be taken into account. Us running PBR events in January where guys go down and throw in January and they're like 16 or whatever, and they're not a guy who throws 96, who's been training all year. Like you're just a regular kid who throws like 82 or 83. Is that really beneficial to you to do that? Like, mm-hmm. Is that worth it? Like, unless you're going to go down there and you've put on 8.5 miles an hour and you're about to blow some doors back and get some looks for some real colleges or like some signing opportunities, just train. Like, just get better at the game. Like, mm-hmm. Like going and facing guys, like flying down to, I don't know, wherever and being like, I threw 3 innings, 2 strikeouts, sat 80 to 84. My spin rate was 1,800. Like, no one cares, dog. Like, no one cares. Like, it's Like, don't waste your time or your money. Like, just get better. Wait, we talk about this with our guys all the time. Unless you have something to show somebody, just put out, like videos everywhere. You can get a hold of college coaches all the time. The JUCO rule, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but like that, the development piece is so much more important when they're younger. Like actually taking the time to build robust athletes that can handle moving fast often and moving fast like in duration, like in perpetuity. So going and showing that you can't move fast and then taking a month off afterwards because you feel like you're all banged up. It's like, yeah, you did it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't train for the marathon. You went and ran the marathon. Yeah, you're going to hurt. Like it's going to suck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's a huge, I gripe about this with when kids get arm pain, they go see a doctor and the doctor says, take 3 weeks off and then you're cleared. And the cleared is just like, go back to what you were doing before. Well, you just spent 3 weeks detraining. Mm-hmm. Like you can't just pick up where you left off. That's not how it works. You just detrain for 3 weeks. And there's some comment in this study too about how increased access to high level players and what they're doing, via the internet, social media, sports team, the Major League Baseball themselves, they market the stuff. You turn on the TV, you always get the shot of what Paul Skeens is doing in the bullpen, and kids imitate that, and even coaches imitate that. They're like, well, if Major League pitchers are doing it, it must be good. And yes, correct, it's good, probably, but you can't with your 12-year-old, you can't do what Major League pitchers are doing. You need to ask yourself, what was that guy doing when he was 12?
Probably just playing catch with his dad.
Yeah, probably.
Probably just
now you do not take Major League throwing programs and apply them to kids and be like, we're going to get Major League results. That's not the correct way to do that. And then there's the pitch smart thing, right? Where, okay, so you go and you play in this pitch smart tournament. Okay, great. And even if you're following the rules, which we know some people don't, but like, then you do nothing until the next pitch smart tournament.
Are you really pitching smart?
No, you're not prepared. You're not, so we have there's this split where everybody's either on one end or the other end of the spectrum, and nobody's just kind of like building step by step. Everybody's either doing way too much or way too little. And then here's another thing about youth baseball. There's a lot of pressure on youth organizations, private, club, public, little league, whatever, to keep roster sizes small so kids get lots of playing time. And then, so parents, they want no more than 12 kids on a roster because my kid needs his at-bats. He needs to get his innings. He needs to play. But then you've got 12 kids on a roster. You've got 6 that are willing to pitch. Really, it should be all 12 should pitch. That's a whole other discussion. But
yeah, man. Just go up there and throw. It's good for you.
It's not
not
that hard. Oh my
God.
Just throw. So then the coach is put between a rock and a hard place. I've got 6-8 kids that are going to go and pitch and do their best and actually try to compete. And I'm expected to play 4 games this week. I need to use 3 of those kids every game if I'm going to keep the pitch counts where they should be. It's an impossible math equation to solve. Not to mention the fact that if they go out and don't do well, now it's the second inning, and I've used one of them, and another one's already got 35 pitches. I'm my back's against the wall. I don't know what you want me to do here. So like, here's what I like. There's some talk in this of like potential rule changes. Now there isn't. I didn't see any specifics. I think
they're just kicking.
If you're going to change
ideas.
rules, I think if you're going to change rules, it is a better idea to change rules at the youth levels of baseball than it is at the major league levels of baseball. And because I think that the trickle down to youth baseball of chasing what we have at the highest level causes problems. But if we change rules at the youth baseball, we'll trickle up healthier players. And I propose that we're already not playing real baseball at the youth level because we play 6 innings, 7 innings. We've shortened the game. I propose that we look at pitch count limits per inning, per team, or batter limits per inning, per team. One of the best and the worst things about baseball at the same time is that there's no clock, and the other team always has a chance. You got to throw the ball over the plate and give them a chance, right? But it's the worst thing when you're at the youth level and you got a kid out there struggling and you can't throw it over the plate and you're walking guys, or there's a mismatch in talent between the two teams and you're getting blown out. You see run limits sometimes per inning at the youth levels, maybe like 5 runs an inning, and then we just switch. Like you hit your limit, time to switch. I propose that we look at pitch count limits, and there's a big downside of that. There's one big obvious downside is that a kid could just like throw the ball out of the zone on purpose to end the inning.
Yeah.
So
I like the premise. I have a thought. If you'd like to hear it, I mean, you're going to hear it anyway because we're here talking about it. You don't really have a choice. So my thought is, so growing up, we had larger roster sizes. We probably had 14 guys on a team, but I played on like 3 different teams. So I'd play on like the Parks Department team, I'd play on the Babe Ruth team, and I'd play on this like other semi-traveling team. And they all only played a couple games a week, but then I could play 6 games a week if I chose to do so. That allowed me to throw all the time. But the problem is now that's just not how it's structured. Like we've gone completely away from midweek games. Jimmy has a game on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Like that is sustainability. That's consistent playing. It's consistent innings. You're getting at bats more frequently. And we've gone to this club ball structure, which I absolutely despise. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. Like, good for all you guys out there who figured out like how club ball works and whatever. But it's not. You pay a ton of money and you play what, 20 games, 30 games in some clubs in a year.
We're working really hard to try to play more games with our teams because it doesn't make like.
It's more fun. You get better.
There's some teams that will play legitimately 15 games in a whole summer.
It's ridiculous.
They play 5 3-game guarantee tournaments, or they'll play 4 4-game guarantee tournaments. And we're looking at 15, 18 games in an entire summer.
Now, mind you, we're kind of cross the streams here. We're saying it's important to develop guys, but it's also, and you don't want to have them playing too much. But really, at the lower levels, we're talking about like young players, like 11, 12, 13, maybe even 14. Frequency is like just playing the game is what's going to make you good. Like just like training, like learning how to lift, learning how to be in the weight room, learning how to run, and then playing the game. And like taking time to hit when you're not playing every day, but like not taking a week off, like just doing things in moderation over a long period of time until your body is ready for you to actually put your foot down and be like, okay, it's time to like really push the envelope here because I'm mature enough to understand the importance of this. Playing is how you get better. Competing is how you get better. We talk about this all the time. Like Mac will say this, Paulson will say this, Roscom says this. The only way to get better is you have to get more at bats. And I say, like, I agree with that, like pitchers wise, unless you really got some stuff going on, the best way to get better is you got to face hitters and see where you're at. You have to. And you have to work through things while you're on the mound. Like that's just part of how it works. So this structure where we have guys playing high school. So a high school season in Minnesota is like the fastest season of all time. It's like 8.5 weeks and you're done. You're lucky if you get 26 games, 27 games, and there's 20 guys on a high school roster. So realistically, unless you're like a starting guy every time, you're going to get 50 something at bats. Maybe.
The highest number of at bats I've ever seen in a high school season was like 81. Okay. And that was a guy who walked 0 times.
Yeah, swinging at everything. But like in high school, you're still going to face that garbage pitcher that you're going to walk. So realistically, let's call it 60 something at bats, right? 60 at bats. And if you throw with the way the rules are now, let's say you throw every 5th to 7th day as a pitcher, you're going to get 5 starts, maybe 6. If you do a couple short starts. So what is that? 30 innings, maybe 40. I mean, Vadira threw 1,000,000 innings, but it's just because they don't got anybody else, and he starts, and they use the pitch thing to their advantage and whatever. How many? He had 60 innings last year, something like that.
Yeah,
40. No, 40. Yeah, he had quite a few. So he's an outlier, but on average, like this is not sustainable when they get to the next level. Like if this is how play is, because guess what? When you get to college, you're playing 60 games
Mm-hmm.
at the higher levels. You're going to play 60 games in a year. You're going to throw, if you're a starter and you're good, you're going to throw 90 innings. This is going to happen. We're taking these guys and we're going from, oh, this is how many games you get because it's important for our team to play in these tournaments, to good luck. You're a big boy now. Figure it out. And that is, I think that jump, whenever that jump happens, that's when we get a lot of these issues. Whereas it's like, if we could just go back to more of a holistic structure of play, we might get a better result.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's 100% true, and there's a lot of data about, average innings pitched per year,
Yeah, I saw that on there.
for college pitchers and stuff. So here, one more screen share. So we look at, to your point, we look at the average inning pitched for college. This is for college pitchers. The last couple seasons before the draft. Look at this. So there's this idea that people are like, oh, it's overuse injury, but these guys are throwing less.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, do we really think it's workload, or is it that the workload is more demanding, or is it that they're not even prepared enough for the workload that they even have? Like because I think that there's definitely people out there that they'll work really hard, they'll develop this pitch arsenal, they'll get their velocity up to a point, and their stuff is kind of where they know they're like, okay, I've got like draft level stuff, and then they're like really careful about taking the car out of the garage because they don't want to like do anything to risk losing that before they can get paid.
Yeah.
And so their workloads have fallen significantly because they're like, I don't want to go out and throw 200 innings. Nobody's throwing 200 innings. I don't want to go out and throw. I don't want to go out and throw 180 innings because I could get hurt. Yeah. I'm going to go out and throw 120 innings so that I'm going to put tape out, and then I'll get picked up, and then I'll go, right. But now you've really turned yourself into a drag car because you have this insane output that you're capable of, but you can't sustain it.
Yep. You can only do it when the track's prepped, and you can only do it when it's like you can't. It's like when we were in high school, Zach, when showcases became big, and it's like, guys be like, oh, that's just a showcase player.
Yeah.
Like when they're lobbing in there for BP and the hitters aren't there, he's a killer. But once he gets in game, he's worthless.
Right. Absolutely. So, and I think that there is some problem about like scouting is a little bit to blame for some of this as well, where like if I'm a 15, 16-year-old kids, I've put 16-year-old kids in front of college coaches who throw 87, and college coaches are going, It's like, okay, like I get it. The goalposts have moved, but we're talking about a kid who's 2 years away from competing at your level. You don't think that there could be some trajectory here? Yeah. You don't think that he might throw harder in 2 years? He needs to be a finished product right now.
Yeah.
That's absurd. And that bothers me a little bit when I'm trying to help out high school kids getting to the next level. The idea that at 16 or 17, they need to be a finished product. That's a new phenomenon that I have experienced in the last few years as well. And that's an unfair ask.
What percentage of the population is really like that high level? I mean, I think the other part too is I think with the way that the transfer portal is and how things are, we're going to have to handle the JUCO thing later, but this is a whole nother can of worms where it's like I think now the bar set so high because you can go out and get a guy. Like you can just go out and get whatever it is. I had a point to make about the throwing volume. Oh, we've had some issues even with that with our high school guys. Like guys will commit to universities or whatever, and they'll be like, they're not pushing their training hard, and it's like they're not at the level they need to be at to go compete at the university they're at. They've been taken to that university dependent, like based upon projectability and what they should be, and they come and they're like, oh, I just don't want to get hurt. And I'm like, so what? You're just going to wait and just hope that you just don't get hurt? Or like, how does that work? Like, perfect example is I'm going to call out Vadir. Vadir the other day goes, I don't want to pull down because I don't want to get hurt. He's like, I want to get on the mound and throw 94. I was like, dude, do you realize that your risk relatively is the exact same, regardless of which way we do this? It's like,
Yeah.
It makes no difference. And also I was like, dude, trust the process we put in place. You're bulletproof. That's the mantra. Like, get out there, rip it, Same thing. Brady Benson said that the other day. He goes, dude, I just don't want to get hurt before I get there. I was like, brother, I'm sick of you being scared. Like, take the training wheels off, man. It's time to fly. But I think the workload thing is like, this is going to sound old head of me, but like you got to throw, because when you get to the big leagues, guess what they're going to make you do? Throw. Like, you got to do it. And it honestly, if it'd be better to find out earlier rather than later.
Yeah.
It'd be better to find out sooner.
So here's kind of a concluding statement for me in a sense. The problem that we see Major League Baseball is looking at is actually a symptom. I think the problem in reality is happening at the much younger ages.
Agreed.
I think the solutions that are been proposed by many people are absurd, which people are suggesting that pitchers should just simply stop trying to have nasty stuff and throw the ball hard. That's insane. That's completely absurd and a non-solution, and nobody's going to do that. The real issue is probably chronic under preparation for the competitive play that's being done. People are trying to only compete, and they're not just playing or practicing. They don't know how to throw at lower intensities when they're playing their positions. Yeah. They don't know how to throw at lower intensities when they're practicing. They just let it rip every time they throw, and they're not throwing often enough. They throw infrequently and at too high of intensities. Here, I meant to call this out. I just glanced at it and I forgot to mention this. They're talking about pitch smart programs, how it hasn't worked. It hasn't achieved its goal. A 2021 study analyzing over 1,000 young pitchers aged 8 to 14 found that nearly half of players had at least one violation of the pitch smart guidelines, with the highest rate of violations in the age 8 and under division.
What?
You want to find a problem? There's a problem right there. The 8 and dude, I don't even remember being 8. Did I play organized baseball at 8? I don't know. Maybe.
I remember being 9. I remember the first time I played, like, where I was like, this is fun. I'm like enjoying playing baseball because I'm good at it, was like, I was 9.
I think I was 10. The first year of baseball that I remember, I think I was 10, because 8, do they even pitch at 8? Do you pitch to each other?
It was a hybrid. It was like, if you threw this many balls in a row, they just brought the machine out and threw.
Yeah. So like, I have no memory of even participating in that. And so the idea that needs to be that competitive is absurd. And that's an adult problem. That's
it's the money thing, man. It's the fact that now travel ball and all this stuff has become so lucrative that it's stupid. But I agree 100% with you, Zach. I think the symptom is the issue. I think the causation is much lower hanging fruit than we think it is. At the same time, we don't have the answers. We're just here on supposition. We're just going based off of what we know. And, not that the process that we've set forth with our guys is perfect, but it's ever changing, and we're trying to get as close as we can to being as good as we can with what we have. And I think it just needs to come down to that. Like, you got to listen. One, you got to listen to your body. You got to learn it. And then you got to understand the importance of, like, leaning into knowing and listening to your body. Like, you have to, like, these 3 things, like, we can put pitch counts on you all day, but unless you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, something's not, like, I feel kind of like crap, Like I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't go throw 6 innings in this perfect game tournament in Kentucky because I need to.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and pitch counts are an imperfect. It's a great idea. Like we should
mm-hmm,
try
yeah,
something, right?
mm-hmm, I
But
agree.
pitch counts are not a perfect solution in and of themselves, anyways,
Mm-hmm,
because you don't know the the preparation status of that kid. You don't know his actual acute to chronic workload ratio and what his chronic workload looks like with total throwing and pitches and intensity. You don't know what his individual genetics are looking like. You
mm-hmm.
don't know, like a kid with cleaner movement patterns and better biomechanics is going to have a theoretically higher ceiling for workload than a kid who moves a little bit less efficiently and puts more stress on his joints when he moves. There's a lot of factors here
But then again, also a more efficient mover technically puts more stress on their body more
because he
often.
throws harder.
And that's the
Yeah,
hard part is we no matter which way you pull which end of the string you pull, this is
mm-hmm.
not there'll never be a perfect solution. But
Well, and
the thing is we
Driveline.
need to learn. We need to learn what as close as we can get to. That's what we need to learn.
Yeah.
And we can't blame like I'm not saying we're blaming, but like in general, we can't have orthopedic surgeon number 7 making a blanket statement on behalf of the MLB.
Yeah.
It's a bad look on everybody.
It's a bad look on everybody. Now, Driveline came, in my opinion, the closest anybody has to a real solution for this, and nobody wants it. No, because the Driveline Pulse thing
Mm-hmm.
is the closest I've seen to something that seems like it could actually get us close to individualizing workload
Mm-hmm.
recommendations for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle Bodie has publicly said, like, yeah, it's like one of our worst selling products. Like, nobody wants this thing. Nobody understands it. Nobody. So like, I don't know, like culturally, maybe we're far away. Maybe people just don't have enough knowledge around what that even means. Um, Maybe it's that it's like kids don't really want to wear it. I've had kids that in our
Just
training
falls
programs that
off and
bought it
yeah.
and they kind of don't like wearing it. That's one
Mm-hmm.
of the issues. So like there's a real big flaw with wearables in sports science.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a thing for sure. So if we could get there with optics, I think that would take the game to a level that would be really really great. Where if we could somehow use video data to quantify workloads and torque and arm stress,
I think it's
that'd be
gonna
great.
happen.
But it's difficult because like you can't 100% measure torque by just looking at it. You kind of have to measure the actual movement profile. And I don't know, but I do think that technology is going to be a path here to, because the real solution to protect kids' arms is to have a real practical way to know exactly how much and how hard he is throwing or she, and make workload recommendations based off of that, and know how strong their forearm is, and do some strength, like have some strength testing. And but the idea that that's going to become accessible to the vast majority of 12-year-olds is not anything that's going to happen anytime soon.
It's
So
buffoonery. Yeah. It's also
buffoonery.
it's I think it comes down to really what it's going to take is it's going to be Elon and his Neuralink, Mr. Musk. But like
Yeah.
that's what it's going to take. It's going to take something
Oh,
like crazy.
I forgot I had a take. We're going to do a hot take right at the end of this episode.
Let it rip and then we got to shut her down.
I think that if we're going to look at rule changes, I think Major League Baseball should take a really hard look at their list of banned substances and allow some of these things to be used to protect these guys' bodies. I'm not talking about go full steroid era and have guys on Winstrol.
Oh,
I
but
don't
we
think,
got a lot of options out there. There's a lot of
but
things. A lot of great things.
but there are things that used to be really fringe that are becoming a little bit more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Supplementations that aren't full on like anabolic steroids. They're not, if we look at peptides, if we look at like anti-inflammatory injections that people can take that used to be illegal or are illegal, and they used to be super fringe, and now they're kind of in when you look at like amateur athletes and regular people who are trying to be healthy, you're seeing people inject peptides, BPC, MK, things like that.
Mhm.
They are not the same thing as anabolics. They're not. It's not Winstrol. It's not Dianabol. It's not these things that people were on in the steroid era that makes your head big and makes you blow up. And it's healing factors, right? And this is the sort of gray area between like, where do we draw the line with using pharmaceuticals technology? Andy Pettit got in trouble for using performance enhancing drugs because he was trying to return from an injury faster. Why is so Tommy John surgery itself? That's an advancement in medical technology. It's accessible to everybody, but that is like artificially performance enhancing medicine.
Agreed.
That people are doing in order to return to playing. It's advanced over the years. Like, why did we not draw the line at 1991? No more medical advancement. So
no labor and repairs. You tear it up, you're done. You're out.
Right. And so there's an interesting podcast article from the author that wrote the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. I can't think of it, but
I can't think of it either.
But he was talking about how like performance enhancing drugs has this weird thing where like medical technology versus drugs, and like there's this line drawn where like you can't use it to be better, but you can use it to be healthy. So if we agree that like we can use medical technology and things to be healthy, maybe we can look at injury prevention in terms of supplementation, regular peptide injections, whatever it is.
I agree.
It's worth a discussion.
I've been saying it for years. Been saying it for years. What are we doing? But hey, we got to bounce. I got to bounce. All right. That was a hot take. We're coming back to that. We're coming back to it. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.